My name is Ron Northcutt. I'm the head of DevRel at Appsmith, and so I'm going to be helping monitor the chat today and learning just like everybody else.
Hey, I'm Joseph. I'm developer advocate with Appsmith. I spent years freelancing. Started out with FileMaker Pro, very old platform, if any of you are familiar with that. And before that, it was just side work. Things at work picked up that on the side. There were some friends that needed help, and then that led to another job. And the next thing I knew, that paid more than my full-time job. So I started freelancing, and then FileMaker. It's a great platform, but you're kind of locked in. It's the vendor lock-in, model. So I was looking for something different and better for web, and I found AppSheet first, used that for several years, and then found Appsmith about 2 years ago, and made it my main platform for freelancing. And then just this past year, accepted a job with Appsmith, and here I am. So excited to share some knowledge with everyone. Sorry, I know that was a long intro, but kind of wanted to give everyone an idea of what our goal is here. And it's coming from a freelancer, and we want to encourage other freelancers as well. So yeah, I'll let you guys take it. Vihar?
Awesome. Hey folks, I am Vihar. I'm also one of the developer relations engineer here at Appsmith. I've been here for, I've been working at Appsmith for almost 1.5 years. It's been, a crazy journey. Primarily, I, manage community and also do a lot of content in terms of educating around, how users can build on Appsmith. But yeah, I think that would be from my end.
Hello everyone, I'm Vidushi, and I'm also in the DevRel team here at Appsmith. I'm sorry for the background noise because I'm in a co-working space right now, but I used to make app internal tools before, like here at Appsmith, and also like I work with blogs and a little bit of social media as well. All right, on to you, Joseph.
All right, and we don't have confidence here today, but if you've watched any of our YouTube videos, I'm sure you know of him. Yeah,
Confidence is famous.
Yeah. All right, so Vidushi, if you want to go on to the next slide, and I think this one is Ron. Do you want to help me out here? We were going to talk a little bit about kind of the purpose of things, and before we jump in. So
this is confidence is here. Do you want to chime in real quick, bud?
Yes, I thought you could hear me. So it turned out my mic was not correctly selected on Zoom, since I haven't been using Zoom for like a month now, but happy you can hear me. All right, so a quick intro. A software engineer turned into developer advocate. So initially I was an Appsmith user, used it at my previous company, and then I loved the tool so much that I was willing to come work at Appsmith and share my experience building on Appsmith with people. So I mostly make tutorials on YouTube. And right now I'm working on a video that helps people use an advanced feature with Postgres, row-level security on Postgres using Appsmith. So that's in the work right now, and it's going to be coming out soon, and you guys would know when that's out. On this side, I self-host, and I'm currently working on my home lab. So maybe I'll be sharing more videos on that on my personal YouTube channel, and you can check that out if you are into self-hosting and building a home lab.
That's awesome.
Confidence.
Always promoting the videos, man. That's fantastic. We've got some good stuff coming up there. One of the things, Joseph obviously is kind of a bit of a legend also in certain freelancer circles. That's where my original background was as well. So I've got a soft spot for freelancers and for consultants who are making a living or trying to make a living. It's not easy when you have to go and find jobs and bid them and win them and deliver and manage customers and do all the things. And Appsmith as a platform really does provide a really solid tool that can be used. So one of the things we've been talking about for a while, and we had our first roundtable back in December, was how we could kind of, give back more, like from a community perspective, and share some of those things. And we've seen a lot of interest, a lot of excitement. The calls that we've had have been great. There's been lots of really great information coming in. So one of the things Joseph and I want to do this year is try and do more. So sharing more of Joseph's knowledge, trying to help make it easier for people in the community to also share and support each other. We've got some things we're working on with our community portal that you'll be seeing in the next month or two, which will make it easier for you to promote yourself, possibly find work. Some very interesting things there that are coming. I don't want to spoil it too much, but just I think the important thing here is to know that, you know, as an important set of our community, people who are out there using the platform, who are sharing it with others, who are building solutions and solving today's problems right now. We really recognize how important it is to make sure that that you guys have what you need. So we're working on that. Last thing I'll say, and then I'll turn it back to Joseph, is if in the meantime you guys have thoughts or you have things about how we could help or ideas, please feel free to share them with me. Actually, I'm going to drop my email in the chat. Always feel free to reach out. You can also find us on Discord. Joseph and Vihar pretty much live there, I think 24/7. I pop in and out from time to time. So yeah, would love any ideas, any feedback, anything that you want to do to help or anything you need to get help. We just really appreciate you guys being here and want to help make you successful. So Joseph, I'll turn it back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ron. So Vidushi, if you want to go on to the next slide, we're going to go into our first topic and we'll start out. Oh, I'm sorry, getting ahead of myself. This is the list of topics. So go ahead, Vidushi. We're going to show the whole list of topics so that anybody, if you have a question, just look ahead. We'll have inbound versus outbound sales, some tips on writing proposals, then the negotiation and contract phase. We'll talk about different ways to handle invoice and payment processing, and then managing timelines and client expectations. So just keep that in mind. Oh, and the last one is strategy versus supply and demand. And that's kind of one of my own, I'm not really sure what to call it. So it's just kind of my own approach. And I wanted to give you guys some tips there of how to approach it throughout your career. So let's go on to the first topic, inbound versus outbound sales. And so we'll go over the differences first. With inbound sales, these are where the leads come to you and it's less effort. It takes a lot of time to build up a web presence that'll bring those leads to you, but it takes less effort to close a deal if it's somebody that's knocking on your door. They know who you are. You know, if it's someone that they saw a blog post or a tutorial that you wrote, or they see your reviews on Upwork or Fiverr and they're coming to you, your chances of winning that job are way higher. You're going to have less involvement of trying to like prove your background or your skills to that client. So it's the preferred method for higher quality leads, but it also takes a lot of time to build that up. And because of that, we're going to put this into a completely separate topic, do a bigger presentation on it. And it's something you should keep in mind from day one, but it's something that's really hard to execute on day one, right? So slowly build up a portfolio, slowly get reviews from each job. And after a while, you can get more inbound leads than outbound. You might stop doing outbound sales altogether. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so to build those inbound leads, like I mentioned, a personal or business website, I went with a brand name. When I was freelancing, I used GreenFlux, and I marketed that. And when I posted on social or whatever, I went under that name. You don't have to have a business name. You might just market like your name and a headshot, and these are my skills. And when people Google this name and API integrations or whatever, you need a lot of results out there. So build that stuff up over time, be consistent with it. And it can be your name or a brand, but just get a lot of that stuff out there. So I really am not a big fan of social media, and I had accounts for my business for it for a few years. I wasn't getting any good leads from it. I got my work in other places, and I ended up just getting rid of the social media sites. But that doesn't mean, you know, everyone should do that. It could work great for you depending on your skills and your network. And so just try everything. Engage in developer communities. So I've gotten a ton of work from posting on forums, and that's part word of mouth, but it's online. Engaging in developer communities, whether you're asking a question or answering, posting tutorials, hacks, tips and tricks, whatever. So that's a great way to bring leads to you, to meet other developers that you can coordinate with on jobs. You might find people that if you get too much work, or maybe an interesting job, but you know, you're not really happy with the budget or the client's, you know, rate or whatever. It's good to have people to collaborate with and share that work. And I've shared a lot of the leads that I haven't been able to take myself. So kind of getting off on a different topic.
I know something about that.
Hey, Jose, yes. Yeah, we started out on a app sheet job together, and it was way more work than I had time for. And Jose, he took the lead and nailed it. He did an awesome job on a huge project. So, okay, last one here. I think it might be the last one. Partner programs. These are another great resource to bring inbound leads. I had one more, I'm sorry. But the partner programs, this will let you become like an official partner of, say, Shopify or Integromat or Make or whatever. And they have programs where you can make a profile on their website, and then when a potential client needs something built in that platform, you know, that's one of the places I'll look. Sometimes I go to Upwork or Fiverr, but a lot of platforms have their own marketplace for those people, and you make a profile in there, and then that can send you leads. That's another place to have reviews. It's something you can link to when you submit a proposal. So figure out what platforms you're interested in and see if they have a partner program and apply. The last thing I'll say about building inbound leads, and again, this is going to be a whole separate presentation later, but build a niche, figure out what you can do that's unique. You know, there are tons of HTML, CSS, JavaScript developers, or React, or some front-end framework, right? There are tons of people that are just going into one no-code platform or the other. But if you are good at, say, API integrations and e-commerce stuff, if you know, like Shopify, eBay, BigCommerce, like you learn all those APIs, then it's more about that industry instead of like one platform that you know. You're becoming expert in that industry. And so then those keywords and the posts and the searches and whatever don't have to be about just one thing, like Appsmith or whatever platform. You're building a whole brand and a specialty around you. And so that can help drive work for certain clients. And it's just one other angle. So there's tons of ways to build the inbound leads. Think about it from day one, but don't expect to only work off of inbound leads from the beginning. Okay, next slide, please. So for outbound sales, this is a traditional approach where you're, you know, spending all of your time applying to jobs, submitting proposals. It is easier to get started as a new freelancer as far as the accessibility. You know, you can find jobs to apply to. It might still be hard to close the deal on those, but it's definitely more accessible from day one. And then you just work on the inbound leads over time and build up that presence at the same time. Is there one more here? Thanks. Go to the next slide. Okay. All right. So we're going to go on to writing proposals, and I broke it into a couple sections. First, we'll talk about kind of structure. I recommend writing several intros in advance and then like a standard closing that you use for all of them, but don't just copy paste the whole thing. You have to read the job posting thoroughly, figure out exactly what they need, kind of read between the lines too, and see if there's other things you can add that they weren't thinking about. Mention specifics about your experience and how it relates to that job. And definitely make sure you use grammar and spell checking tools. And it really helps if there's some other external resource that it's not just you saying what your skills are. You know, give them something else to go check out with, like your website. And then lastly, like propose the next steps so that they're not waiting for you to send a follow-up. Put a question in there at the end, a link for a meeting or a link to your calendar so that they can book it themselves. It really helps if you reduce that friction in getting that next meeting set up. I mean, the back and forth with, are you free this day? Or how about this afternoon? And, you know, then it gets late in the evening and you don't hear back that day. So just set up your your calendar with HubSpot or something where you can send them a link and let them book it, and just plan on the hours that you're going to be available. Okay, so that's kind of on the structure and writing it. Then we're going to go on to like contracts, different types of them. So that may be involved in the initial proposal, or the proposal might just be kind of on what you're building. But when you do start to consider what type of contract you want to use, so the main ones are fixed priced, hourly, and retainer. Upwork is mainly about Fiverr is mainly fixed price. They don't really have a good structure for hourly. Upwork has both, and they recently added the like weekly retainers as well. And then you can do your own thing and try to like, you can, I wouldn't really recommend writing your own contracts, at least find some resource to base it off of. But if you're not using a platform that handles all that stuff for you, then you know, figure out what approach that you want to use, how you're going to bid jobs, as it hourly or fixed price. With fixed price, you can break it into smaller chunks and lower the risk for both of you. So when you don't know exactly what you're building, the client, you know, it's easy for them if they know exactly how much they're going to pay, but then you don't know exactly how much you're going to have to build for that. So if it's unclear, then break it into smaller chunks and make that first part clear, so you know what it is you have to do for that amount. Okay, next point here. Yeah, phases and milestones. So this can be part of your contract, that the entire thing from the beginning was planned out to be broken up into phases or milestones. Or you may find once you get into it that you need to adjust the scope, and there's not enough clarity on the second half, so let's split it. But also consider after the initial build, is there going to be a need for ongoing support and maintenance? So like with Appsmith, it can be self-hosted, and you might have somebody that has no interest in self-hosting, or they don't have the skills or the knowledge to manage that server. And so maybe the app itself isn't, maybe you're not going to get the best hourly rate because you're new, or it's a small job and you'd rather have, you know, something where you can work on it for weeks or months or whatever. But also consider that ongoing support, and that can be residual. It might not be a lot from that one client, but if you're good at managing servers and want to offer that as a service, that could be something that you only build, you know, 3 or 4 apps a year, and then you get those things like build up residually, and after time that could be like a steady flow of income. So there's different approaches. You don't have to try to make all of your money on that first interaction with the client. Think about the long term, what their needs are. They might just want something small to validate your skills or the platform that you're building in. But then afterwards, they see that you're a good dev and they like this platform. There could be tons of work there. So, and then the last point there, being a reseller. A lot of platforms offer some type of agreement with people that are bringing them customers. If you're in the middle, basically acting as a reseller, there's certain, like Shopify, I keep going back to because I have a lot of experience in e-commerce. In BigCommerce, they'll send you like a monthly check based on the amount of sales that client had through their Shopify store or BigCommerce. So all those different approaches can be ways that you slowly build this up over time. It doesn't have to be that perfect job that's gonna, you know, you're gonna make a couple thousand on in one shot. Just consider the different aspects, different services you can offer, and there's, you know, you don't want to weigh everything off of that initial interaction with the client. There's great long-term clients that might have a ton more work after that initial interaction. So, all right, let's go on to the next slide. So managing timelines and expectations. Should we pause for questions? I see we have several things in the chat. How are we doing?
I think we're doing. If anybody has questions, you can drop them in. I'll be.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm moving too fast or if we should get all the questions at the end, but I think I'll keep going then. So for managing timelines and client expectations, always add in some extra time. I mean, the only time I wouldn't is if it's basically already built, if it's something you've done before and you can like copy an app and change a few things. But if you think it's going to take you a week, tell them 2 or at least a week and a half. And then when something comes up, you're still delivering on time. You're not damaging your reputation or hurting their opinion of you, so that you can maintain a good relationship. Even when something comes up, you're still delivering on time. So do yourself a favor, so that when you got to pick the kids up that day, or something comes up or whatever, you're not panicking. When something comes up and it's going to be a delay, let the client know ASAP. You might take a minute just to see if it's, maybe you'll figure it out or whatever. But if it's a definite blocker, let them know sooner than later, and explain why. Like, let them know that we didn't talk about this thing, or we didn't know this was going to be an issue. If it turns out it's something that you overlooked, you might have to eat it. You might just do that fixed price for the same amount. But if it's a completely different, like, change of scope, if the reason this thing's suddenly way bigger, more time intensive than before, that's your chance to renegotiate if you're on a fixed price. If the scope's changing, don't let that scope creep. It can be a tiny request at first, but then there's another and another. And so at some point you have to use that as an opportunity to renegotiate if you're on fixed price. If you're on hourly, just give them a heads up that, hey, it's going to add several hours. The rate's the same, but their cost is going up now. So just have that conversation. Don't let it happen in the background and ignore it. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, so for invoices and payments, I'm going to put out a disclaimer first. I really don't want to keep promoting Upwork and Fiverr. It's not the only solution out there, and they've changed a lot over the years. It's not the same platform as when I first started on them. However, it solves so many things. It's so much easier to have your source of leads, your contract, arbitration or negotiations, disputes if there's an issue on the contract, escrow. They hold funds in escrow, and then you don't have to worry about the client not paying. So there's plenty of pluses, but again, the platforms have changed a lot, and there's a lot of spam posts, and so I get it if you don't like it. So the other option would be to build your own DIY with, like, HubSpot for leads and managing clients, and then you send that to Stripe and send them a link or an invoice. That can be a lot more time to set up. There's still going to be some fees involved. If you really look, you might be able to piece together everything using only free services. But in my career, it ended up getting to a point where Upwork, the fees were a really good deal, because after so long with a client, the rate drops after like $10,000. I think it goes down to 5%. And if you're going to pay 3% for a credit card transaction anyway through Stripe, 2% more for contracts and all the protection and the escrow and everything else that it offers you, to me, that's a good deal. 20% when you're first getting started, though, that's steep. So I get it. It's a steep cut at first. They're taking a lot of it, but if you get over that hump and you start building up enough and you get past those smaller jobs, it really is a good deal. Okay, so for logging unbilled time, if you're hourly or even fixed price, it's good to mention on the invoice if you're doing things for free. I mean, if you're going to do a little bit of work here and there for free, that's okay. It can help win you a job if you do a little something extra. But don't let it go unnoticed. Like, put on there that you spent 5 hours researching whatever so that you could do a proof of concept on something that didn't work out and you didn't use it. But put that on there so that they see how much extra effort you're putting in and not billing them. And then with expenses, this could go any direction. It really depends. There's so many variables, like what country are you in, taxes, are you a independent freelancer, or are you did you start out your own business in LLC, or are you part of an agency? So basically just consider expenses. If there are subscription fees involved for the platforms or whatever that you're using, I would build things in my account when I was using another subscription platform, and it was for a customer that didn't have a paid account yet. And they don't want to pay for an account just for me to build something that they may or may not like yet. They haven't seen the finished product yet, right? So I would constantly be paying for more users in my account than I needed on a long-term basis. These were like new people coming and going as I'm working with this client for a month or two. And so that's a cost that I accepted. I didn't pass on to them during the development phase, but I made it clear to them that as soon as the app is built, you're going to take ownership of this and you'll have a subscription fee. So in that case, I just ate the expense, but it was, you know, only the 2 or 3, sometimes 4 clients that I was actively working with for that month or two. And then those would switch out for other ones. And so it was the same amount. It didn't keep adding up. They would go on and somebody else would take that spot. And then at the end of the year, since I do have a business, I'm not just freelancing on Upwork, but I have a separate licensed business. I can claim that as an expense, you know, with my taxes. For the next person, if you don't have a business or it's different in your country or whatever, again, there's so many variables, so I can't tell you the right approach. Just consider how to note that stuff in invoices. You might tell them that you covered it, just like the unbilled time. You could show them what other services or things that you're using that are costing you money, but that you're offering them for free. All right, let's go on to the next one. So strategy versus supply and demand. I looked at a couple different resources for this type of presentation, and I didn't find this as a specific topic, but to me it should be. It's just kind of something I saw happen throughout my freelancer career and that I advise others on. So I think that you have to change your strategy of how you engage with clients, of how you advertise your services, your rate. All that stuff should change with your career, with your skill set, and really based on the supply and demand. If you're doing things right, the demand for your services should be going up over time. And the amount of time that you have to offer, you know, to your potential clients is going to max out. You only have, you know, 40, 50, whatever hours a week that you want to work. So you're going to have to start out at a lower rate to get anybody's attention on Upwork or Fiverr. If you're brand new with nothing, you know, no work history, but slowly raise your rates, even if it's just like, you know, $5 between a job or something. If you get that first job and you do a good job, you get a review, then that second person looking at your profile will be a little more willing to pay that extra 5 and then 5 more. And then you've got 3 reviews and 4. And so even if it's just a small bump, just in between clients, start raising the rate a little bit. Okay, let's go to the next point. This is a great tip for Fiverr specifically. It's probably good on other platforms, but by breaking a larger job into milestones or completely separate contracts, you can get more reviews, more jobs, more. When they click on your name, it's got that little number in parentheses, like this guy's done 8 jobs and got 4.8 stars or whatever, as opposed to one job that didn't work out so well and you got 1 review out of it and it's 3 stars. Right. So if you break that first one into a completely separate and it's small and easy and you knock it out, get it finished and get a review on it and then go on to the next section. You know, that can help you leave that first interaction with that client with 2 or 3 reviews and 5 stars. And that's going to make the next job that much easier. All right. Cool. That went a little quicker than I thought, actually. So if there are any questions, let's go back to the first slide. Can we go to the topics? Maybe should we go down the list that way or just take questions as they come in?
I think we can pull in the topics up's a good idea.
Yeah, the list of that's way back there. Here we go.
Looks like there is a question from Vicky.
Yeah, thank you for that. First off, Joseph, thank you very much for all of that information. It was really informative, really detailed, really appreciate it. I had a couple of questions. The first one about kind of those inbound, outbound sales. So in your own personal opinion, of course, I mean, are there any must-haves for a portfolio or a GitHub profile or a website that you're passing on to clients to stand out? Any must-haves in your opinion?
So as far as specifics, I think it really depends on the industry, the client, the type of job or whatever. But if I could boil it down into one thing that is across the board, it's when you submit a proposal, it should be more than just text, more than just you saying what your skills are. So that can be an attachment of, you know, images or GIFs or PDF or video, something demoing your work. It could be an external link to your website. You might have an entire portfolio or somewhere they can demo an interactive, like live app that you built, but just something besides plain text. What that thing is really depends on the type of job, the type of client. If they want to see something about API integrations, a blog post that you wrote, I would send different links based on the job I'm applying to. So I always would include something external like that, but the thing that I would pick totally depended on the job. I'd be like, what's the problem they're trying to solve? Where have I done this before? Okay, send them that video or that blog post, or, you know.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for that. And then I just had one more. You were talking about kind of the whole invoices and payments, and you mentioned Upwork, Fiverr, or maybe, you know, the do-it-yourself versions, HubSpot. For complete beginners, say that have just graduated or finished a coding bootcamp, what would you suggest starting off on? Is it better having, you know, that Fiverr or Upwork, or is it best going straight to HubSpot as a complete beginner?
So again, I think it depends on the industry. And if you can create a niche, then you might be able to get some traction on Upwork and Fiverr as a brand new freelancer. When you're just a general like dev, just doing like front end or back end, and you don't have like a specific niche yet, and you don't have a big like work history portfolio, Upwork and Fiverr are probably going to be really hard to get started on. So maybe go with a newer platform that doesn't have as many, you know, people drowning you out. But if you've got that niche to market, then you'll bubble up to the top on those searches and be able to, you know, have more visibility. So just depends on your approach and what skills you have to market.
Brilliant. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Awesome. We also have another question in chat from Erland. What are examples of jobs that can be freelance using Appsmith? And are some jobs more common than others?
Yeah. So if you look at the data sources, the integrations we have for APIs and databases, there's a huge list of them. And when I was freelancing full-time, I would search for not the platform I wanted to build it in, but the things it could integrate with, right? So you could go through Upwork or Fiverr or whatever, searching for jobs that integrate with MongoDB or Postgres or GraphQL or REST APIs, or there's a huge list. And then we have native SaaS connectors for HubSpot and Airtable and Twilio. So searching for those other integrations, the client maybe has never heard of Appsmith, but they don't have to know it's the solution, right? When they're posting the job, they just know what things they want to integrate with. So search for those, and there are tons of them. There's so many different things that Appsmith can connect to and use cases. It's really hard to like, it's easier to tell you what it can't do, which is where we hand it off to another platform and integrate with, say, N8N for scheduling cron jobs. So that's one of the few things where we can connect to tons of different types of platforms, but it has to be running in somebody's browser to execute any kind of action. And if you wanted something that ran on a schedule on a server, you could connect Appsmith with N8N. So kind of off on a tangent there, but it can do so many different things that search the integrations instead. And ones that are more common than others, what we're seeing a lot lately are existing internal tools that need either extended or completely overhauled, and they're going to maintain the same backend or API and just want to build a whole new front end for it. So we're seeing a lot of use cases where people come in and they're like, hey, this legacy system, we still want to connect to the database, but the UI is a mess and we don't want to rebuild it you know, in a front end framework like we did before. We want something quick, drag and drop. But then the back end is still accessible. It maintains that, you know, whatever data that they had before, they're just connecting a new front end. So that's really common.
Yeah, and one thing that I would say, just remember that, you know, Appsmith is really, the platform is really focused on building out that UI. So we don't have an inbound and an in-platform database or backend storage system. So you're going to need something else to fill that, whether it's existing or not. The other thing that I would say that can be a real advantage for using Appsmith is two things. Number one, early on in the phase when you're working with a customer, you can actually go in and start to do your designs and your initial prototyping before you actually tie everything together. So you might even make that in one of those initial milestones that Joseph was talking about, of like getting approvals for the wireframe, only instead of doing a wireframe in some other tool and then implementing it, you can actually build it in Appsmith. So that's actually something that we do internally when we build templates, for example. We have, the use case that we define, we do the user stories about it and talk about what it's going to tie into, what it's going to do. And then we actually do the design in Appsmith itself and basically build out, 95% of the UI, get internal approval on that before we go through the work. So that's one thing. The other thing to think about is that, when you're talking to folks and you're bidding on jobs, this can also be one of those things that can give you an advantage, because we've seen this repeatedly. I mean, Vidushi just had a project we were talking about, was it yesterday or the day before, where there was some data that they were trying to connect to, and some people were trying to connect using Tableau. And Vidushi was able to do the same thing in a fraction of the time because it was just so much faster and easier in Appsmith. So the faster you can go, the more competitive you can be with your estimate or with your bid, which gives you a better chance to win. It also means that you can kind of tighten up the scope and kind of move things more quickly and possibly even increase your margins. So I would say overall, think about things where you're going to need a UI to connect to something existing, or Appsmith's going to be part of your solution, where you might use Google Sheets, or you might use Supabase, or you might use Airtable or something like that for one part, and then Appsmith will be the other part. And then again, when you're working with customers, having that kind of actual app wireframe built in the tool and getting approval there can save you a bunch of time later. So just some thoughts. Awesome. Other questions? Other comments? Does anyone else have anything to add? We've got a lot of brain power, not just on the Appsmith side, but everyone here. So would love to hear some of that.
Hello, here is Jose from New Leap Solutions.
Hey, Jose.
Hey, Jose.
Hey, as Joseph said a moment ago, I'm one of those guys that he helped to start freelancing. So I'm kind of new in this field. I started like 1 year and a half, maybe. I really enjoy it. So thank you, Joseph, for your help.
Yeah, so to give you guys a little background, Jose messaged me, probably 3 years ago. I think you were in Venezuela at the time, right?
That's right. That's right.
And he was interested in getting started with freelancing, and I gave him some pointers. And then one day he messaged me. He's like, "Hey, I'm gonna be in the U.S., and he had moved up here and wanted to start freelancing. And so we got on a call. I gave him some pointers. A little while later, I had a client contact me with a really big project that I did not have enough time to do. And so I messaged Jose, and he was interested. We got on a call with the client, and he ended up taking the lead on it. And it was, at the time, I knew it was bigger than I had time for, but I still didn't realize how big it was. I mean, how long did you work on that thing, man?
1 year.
Time for what, a whole year?
A whole year, yeah.
Yeah,
it was,
and they were really happy with it too.
Great experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be honest, at the start, I was kind of nervous because it was my first time directly interacting with a client that it was really a client. I have done things for me or for friends, and I was actually a good developer, I guess. And that's maybe why Joseph trusts me for this project. But interacting with the client was the most interesting part, like getting to really deliver for them and feeling that, hey, what I know can help these people and they really like what I do. So that was really awesome, and that changed everything. From there, I decided never go back to other job or whatever. I just full-time freelancer now. And
I said
that right now.
I said that at one point. I didn't think I'd ever get out of freelancing, but some jobs are too good to turn down. So
That's right. That's right. And now actually I'm in a point that I have to do the same that you did with me, sharing some leads to other friends or partners that are starting, because I cannot take them. So that's cool. You can help others and build your network. I like that part. But well, to not extend too much here, my question for you is, did you ever have any issues with a job, as an anecdote, with a client that you had to do more? Because this happened for me once. When I was starting, I didn't do a proper scope of work. So the client get confused and thought that I would be doing way more things that I would be doing. So I ended up, for the sake of my reviews, working with this client for more than 6 months for free. And we ended up being friends, which is good. And he still told me to solve issues and everything. Everything ended up well. The part I didn't like was that I had to take all of these hours just for this mistake and avoid any issues with him. Did you ever have issues of this kind? How did you solve it? Or what are your recommendations to avoid it?
I did have one client early in my freelancing career where I had kind of a big loss. Started out all right. It was several $1,000s on the first job, and it seemed like a good client and no issues with getting paid. And then he wanted to build more and build more. And I think I got 2 or 3 payments from him, but then there was like 4,000 on the last one that I never got. And wow. That's when I quit using, trying to do my own contract, and I made everything go through Upwork and Fiverr so that there was that protection. So I don't know. I did lose a lot of time on it, but I got a lot of work in the first like two-thirds, maybe 3/4 of the job that I still got paid for. It was just like the last section of it that basically I think it was, the app was where he needed. It had everything, and he was tight on cash, and then he just ghosted me. So if you're on Upwork or Fiverr, it's you're gonna have a way to at least act on that. It's like you won't have to go after them, right? Upwork and Fiverr will handle that for you, but you'll have a way to initiate it. One other thing I had was luckily I'd broken this job up into a bunch of milestones, and so I was protected. Here's a different story where it could have been bad, but I'd kind of learned different approaches that saved me on this one. I had a client that we broke it into a bunch of milestones. Did the first part, it was good. He would kind of go away for a couple of weeks and I wouldn't hear, and then he'd come back, okay, let's do this, and then we do that, and then add more, and then the last time he disappeared for months, and by the time he came back, I had tons of other work to do, and he's complaining that, well, no, we need to do this, we got to add this isn't working, and it's a bug. Like, no, it can't be a bug if it's a feature we haven't ever discussed building, right? This is a fixed price thing for individual chunks, milestones, and if we had bid it, if I had structured it as a finished product, right, then that would have been something that needed to be in there that was included. But the way we were breaking it up into chunks, and there was a scope defined for each one, when he came back 2 months later and was demanding that we get back to work on this and upset, the stuff that he was calling a bug, right, it wasn't in the scope of anything that we had done yet, and I didn't have time to pick back up because he was gone for months, and now I'm on this other job. I helped find him somebody else. I pointed him towards somebody else that he could work with, but I had multiple 5-star reviews from him up to that point, and we closed out those jobs. And then when he came back and things weren't going so well, it didn't hurt my ratings because we had locked in those reviews. We closed out things. So that's a way to protect you when things go bad. You might spend 100 hours working on a job with a client and it goes great for the first 80 and you've got awesome, relationship going with them, but then it falls apart at the end and you get a bad review out of it. That's hard to recover from. So break it into smaller chunks and make sure they're happy with each part of it and get a good review. And then if something happens in one part of it, it'll be 1 review out of 5 instead of 1 big one.
Makes sense. Thank you, Joseph.
You're welcome. Anybody else before we wrap things up?
Joseph, sorry,
Yeah.
I was just walking in the door, so I didn't get a chance to ask a question.
Oh, sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Just a really simple one. I'm freaked out by the thought of getting a bad review, just with the fear of it's going to hurt my profile so bad that I won't be able to find work. How big of a fear is that really?
At the beginning of your career on a certain platform, it really only affects you a lot within that one platform. So if you're just starting out on Upwork or Fiverr and your first job gets a bad review, that's really going to hurt. That's hard to get past. If it's halfway through and it's like 1 review out of whatever, people are going to see it, but they may be willing to overlook it if it's 1 out of 5, if you've got a couple jobs under you first, and the more that you get, the less effect that it'll have. Upwork specifically, I know, has an option to remove reviews, but it also no longer counts like the job success score or the stats or whatever, right? Like, so it looks like you've done 1 less job. So worst case, there's that. Honestly, when you see it starting to go south, for one, don't take a job if you have any indication that this client's not going to give you a good review, right? And that means your skills compared to the scope of the job, you can deliver, but also they're easy to communicate with, right? I mean, if they're short with you and like difficult to communicate with before you've even closed the deal, then maybe don't close the deal. So try to take jobs that look like you're going to get a good review, for one. But then 2, as soon as you see it starting to go south, like do whatever you can to recover it. Whether that means going the extra mile and doing a little, more work, it was something unexpected and it's more time and whatever you got to do to pass things over, or maybe it means asking them about, ending the contract. Just be straight with them. Hey, this is way more work than we originally discussed, and if that's the reason it's going bad or whatever it is, you bring it up and say, how do you feel about breaking it off here, and instead of the full amount fixed price, we'll reduce it to this to cover just what I've done, or something. Like, say you were supposed to deliver something for $2,000 and you've done $500 worth of work. Instead of struggling to get that last part and then get a bad review, just break it off where you're at and say, how about we cut our losses? So do whatever you can, whether it's patching it up or mutually separating without any kind of hard feelings that would lead to a bad review. But then if you get there, if it actually happens, and if it's early in your career on Upwork and Fiverr or whatever, chances are you might be stuck there, man. Maybe it's time to go to a different platform. If you've got no reviews and then your first one's bad, or your first couple, yeah, it's a legitimate fear if that's your situation. But if you've got other reviews under your belt, then it might not be so bad.
Yeah, that's fair. Not that I've received a bad review yet, but it's always in the back of my mind when things start. I've got just one client in particular that the scope has suddenly changed because the providers that they are trying to integrate with promised integrations with things that they actually don't integrate with, and so now it's kind of a where do we stand? And I don't want to. I don't want to get into a position where suddenly I get a bad review and it basically ruins my career on that platform.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I would also just chime in there, Robert, kind of like Joseph was talking about earlier, just that communication piece. And I've, my freelancing days, I worked with some some pretty interesting people, and sometimes things could get a little bit hairy. But as long as there was good communication, typically that covered a lot of issues. So I think that, you know, it's totally fine when things change, with the scope changes or things pop up or problems arise that no one foresaw, to sit down and say, hey, let's take another look at this. Maybe we need to change something or make adjustments. Typically that's going to be okay. The other thing I would say is that the kind of people that are probably going to be leaving bad reviews because they're maybe a bit of a jerk, they're also just not going to have a good reputation on the platform. So that's another thing to keep in mind as well. Like, take care of the people you work with, and try and do the best you can. Honestly, goodwill and honesty are going to protect you from a whole lot.
That's fair. Thanks.
Well, all right, guys. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. Keep an eye out. We'll post another event coming up soon, where we've got at least 2 more planned, and some other cool things that I wish I could tell you more about. But just know that there's some cool things in store for freelancers coming from Appsmith. So thanks again, everyone.